dream of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power. Fight the power.
You see me heavy work. You see me do me dirt. So me better work. When you walk a line. I'm in the cafe, drive me a dessert. No time to have you lurking. You make a like, now you don't like it. You know I dealt with you the nicest. Nobody touched me in the righteous. Nobody text me in a crisis.
You are listening to the Black Pack here on KBLA Talk 1580. I am your host, Adrianne Shropshire, and the only thing to talk about today is work, whether or not there is any or not. We have had literally nothing but chaos since January 20th in this nation. But I have to say that even by this administration's standards, today was quite a day. And I mean, to be clear, it's been a week, of course, with all sorts of things popping off. But August has kicked off with a bang as the July jobs report numbers were released today. And they weren't good. By anybody's standards. But I don't think that, I needed to tell anyone that who listens to the show who is just, living life right now. I've mentioned a couple of times a new poll that Black Pack released last week. And one of the questions that we asked on the poll that was commissioned, of course, by our friend and pollster, Cornell Belcher, one of the questions that we ask Black voters is whether or not they thought the economy was getting better or worse. And so you can imagine the response, right? So 75% of Black voters said that the economy was getting worse. 75% of Black voters believed that the economy was getting worse. So people did not need the jobs report that came out today to tell them that the economy is not good. And that not only is it, just bad, it's actually getting worse. And that number is bad enough all by itself, right? That 75% of Black voters think the economy is getting worse. But when we compare that number to last year, so just a year ago, when we asked Black voters the same question last summer before the election, 41% of Black voters said that the economy was getting worse. And we thought that was bad, right? We thought almost half of Black voters think that the economy is getting bad. And now at this point, 75% are saying that it's getting worse. Almost no one believes that the economy is getting better. And the same is true for people's personal financial situation. Folks also believe that for the most part that their personal financial situations are not getting any better either. So I didn't need, we didn't need the jobs report to tell us that the economy is trash. But the jobs report today did clarify with data, and we like a data point, that despite the administration's rhetoric about how everything is great, it is, in fact, not great at all. So the data released earlier today, and we're going to talk about this later a little bit in the show as well. The data released earlier today showed that only 73,000 jobs were created by employers in the month of July. That is significantly lower than expected. In fact, according to the Wall Street Journal, the Labor Department has consistently made negative revisions to the job numbers with each report, meaning they have adjusted downwards as a loss of jobs, right? And so when we look back at the June jobs report, right? So the 73,000 jobs created in July are what we got today. They also adjusted the June numbers that had come in saying that 147,000 jobs had been created by employers in June. They adjusted that down to 14,000. Only 14,000 jobs created by employers in June. And then on top of that, they adjusted the May numbers. The May numbers initially estimated that had been 139,000 jobs that were created. That was then later revised down to 19,000. So only 19,000 jobs created in May, 14,000 jobs created in June, and 73,000 jobs created in July. That's not a stellar economy. That is not whatever it is that the President of the United States and his administration are rolling around on Fox News saying is happening with our economy. On top of that, the national unemployment rate rose to 4.2%. But of course, that's everybody. The unemployment rate for Black Americans is at 7.2%. So things are not good. And this is the reason why we didn't necessarily need this jobs report to tell Black folks that the economy was not going well. We know it because we're feeling it every day. So what was Trump's reaction then today? What was his reaction to this terrible jobs report? Well, he did the usual thing, right? Deflect, blame someone else, start a war, right? Literally. So in the aftermath of the report, Trump flipped out, of course. He fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics by social media posts because, of course, if you fire the person and you blame them, right? If you say it's the data, it's the numbers, it's not really my terrible decisions in terms of policy, then maybe you can sort of cover up, right, what's actually happening. It reminded me of during the pandemic when folks were calling for more testing, and Trump said, no, don't do any more testing, right? Because if we don't test, then there won't be any more cases, and then the numbers won't be going up, right? So let's just not talk about it, and it won't be there. So he fires the head of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Right-wing media starts blaming the Fed chair, of course, Jerome Powell, which they blame for everything. I'm not sure why they're blaming him for the jobs report, but whatever. And weirdly, a member of the Fed resigned today as well, which means that Trump will be able to replace that person with someone that he wants. And then because, of course, they go to, the same playbook that this administration always goes to, which is when you have a crisis that you've created that you want to deflect, right? And they want to deflect away from their incompetence and their failures. Suddenly the president creates a new crisis. And so also today, you had the president of the United States post on social media that he is sending nuclear submarines to Russia. Why? To help the Ukrainians, you ask? No, because his feelings got hurt by the former Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev. Now, Hillary Clinton told y'all a lot of things. So did Kamala Harris. But Hillary Clinton said to y'all that you don't give the nuclear codes to a man who can be offended by a tweet. And so here we are, right, with deflection around this terrible economy that leading to him doing, as always, very dangerous things. So we're going to talk about the economy and what is happening with the economy, the jobs report. When we come forward, we're going to dig into the numbers a little bit more with Diedrich Asante Muhammad, the president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. This is the Black Pack. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah. At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time, whenever news breaks, while we're on the air. It's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. Thank you.
Exciting news, ladies! Always Discreet Boutique Bladder Leak underwear are available in black and printed design. Protect yourself with style. These fit and feel just like real underwear, and they give you up to 0 leaks, 0 odor. Designed for all shapes and sizes, they give you the confidence to be fully yourself. Don't let bladder leaks hold you back. Buy Always Discreet Boutique Bladder Leak underwear now.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. The Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to the Black Pack, and this is Adrianne Shropshire, and we were talking earlier about the economy, the jobs report that came out today, the president flipping out, as you might expect. And I am so glad to have Dietrich Asante Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, on with me now to talk about all of this, including some of the bills that have been passed recently that have negative economic impact on our community. So thank you so much, Dietrich, for joining and helping us break this down.
Yes, it was great to be on.
So I'm gonna just jump in and ask you about the jobs report. So we know the numbers came out. The previous month's jobs reports were rounded down in terms of the number of jobs that were created. Yeah. Can you just talk to us a little bit for listeners? Help us understand what is the cause of that. I think a lot of talk is been happening out there about the impact of the tariffs. Is this that? Is this something else? Is it something structural? Like what is happening?
Well, the kind of updating of past numbers wouldn't be about tariffs per se. It's, they get information, they're trying to quickly turn it around for, what is the assessment of what is the unemployment rate, how many jobs were created. They put out, August 1st today for July. Mm-hmm. They have more time. They can kind of look over more information over, the next month, and they can figure out how much they need to recalculate the numbers and how that changes. And so what they noted was that actually the analysis they had done before was actually too positive, was creating, many more jobs than were actually created. And I think that is what seems to have caused Trump to be in so much anger, not just that we have a weak jobs report this month, but that it really shows that for the last 3 or 4 months, that the country hasn't been producing jobs as the way he would want it. And I think fairly unprecedented. I'm not sure if he fired or just promised to fire the head of the BLS.
Well, it was a social media post, so I don't think that's official, but maybe who knows?
Yeah. Yes.
So let me ask you this, because I think that this isn't the first time that numbers have been have changed, right? And I always
and actually, I'll just put that forward. Yeah, that's standard. I mean, every time there is refinement of the numbers.
Right, and why does that happen? Because I think that there's I've heard a lot of we're not conspiracy theorists here, right? But there's been a lot of saying that this is intentional, and I think that I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it isn't abnormal, right? Why is it that sometimes, and you said a little bit, but why is it that the numbers end up getting changed?
Well, again, I mean, it's not like there's automatic database where every person who loses their job just automatically it appears in some database. It's estimates from different data sets, and again, they're kind of rushing to put an estimate of the unemployment rate for the country in terms of total jobs and as well as in terms of percentages. And so again, as they have more time, they can more refine their analysis, their estimates. And so this is pretty standard. And I would say, left-leaning think tanks, right-leaning think tanks all utilize BLS data. And, generally, no one who seriously studies this sees that BLS has a political agenda in the way that it's regularly putting out unemployment numbers. And I think that's why you're going to find many people offended by this notion that really Trump seems to be saying that if you don't put out the numbers I want, then we will get rid of you, and we will really make these numbers baseless, right? Because if that's the way it is for if it's after Trump and then the Democrat comes in and he does the same thing or she does the same thing, then we know that these numbers really tell us nothing, and we have to figure out some other way to estimate how the economy is doing or how one aspect of the economy is doing in terms of unemployment numbers or employment to population ratio numbers.
Yeah. And it is a part of the thing that they do to try and reshape reality, right? By whatever means, right, across various platforms. Now we see, in our mainstream media a lot, them sort of putting out information that is actually inaccurate, and it just getting repeated over and over again. So let's talk about the unemployment rate, because we saw the unemployment rate inch up a bit, right? It's up to 4.2, but we also know all the time that when the overall unemployment rate is up, it means it's really up, right, for Black America. And so the unemployment rate for Black Americans is 7.2% right now. How does that compare? How is that up from last year, from a couple of years ago? Are we seeing steady unemployment growth for Black Americans right now, or is it up and down like the rest of the economy?
Yeah, I mean, one, just to note the big difference in 7.2% versus a 4.1%. Oftentimes, historically, they have said that total full employment is at around 4%, meaning there's always going to be some people who are unemployed, right? People are going to quit their jobs, people are going to lose their jobs, and then they go look for another job. So there's always going to be a part of the population. Right. So they assume kind of that in. And what's amazing is white people's unemployment is even below the 4% number, right? And so I've always looked at it as a goal of how do we get Black unemployment to Black employment to a level of full employment. And we were seeing some record low levels of Black unemployment, as down to right around 5.5%, which is, historically low. We had actually an average of almost 10% unemployment for, in the early 2000s, like much higher unemployment. So we've recently been at a place of fairly good unemployment numbers. 6% is even still historically pretty good, though again, it's still much higher than it is for whites. But now that we've gone from 6.1 from not too long ago to now 6.8, 6.8 last month, and now 7.2 this month. Right. This is I think really getting concerning that we're not going to be able to maintain historic lows of Black unemployment, and 7% unemployment. If whites were in that would be like deep recession territory for white unemployment to be at 7%. So I think this is something that we should be concerned about. There should be a noise being made, and should be asking, and this all follows. And I don't think it's a direct link, but it does follow Trump attacking anything that people connect to addressing racial inequality, right? And so whether it's through different executive orders, whether it's through shutting down different agencies or what have you. Yeah. So this is a greater cause for concern because he seems to be taking a very strong stand on any type of government institutions that are focused on addressing inequality, and now we're seeing economic situations getting worse for Black Americans.
And can we, because we also know, there's certainly the executive orders, there's an attack on diversity in general, but we also know that there's been this huge attack on federal workers, and we know that Black folks are a disproportionate percentage of the federal workforce. Are those layoffs, are we starting to see the effects of those layoffs in these numbers, or is that yet to come?
Yeah, I think that I haven't seen clear analysis, of that yet, of being able to link. And I also note that I think it's not just the attack on the federal aspect of diversity and the federal aspect of inclusion of Black people. It's that it set a tone that then corporate America is also following with, right? And so it's not just in the federal sector or the government sector as a whole, because it's not just federal, it's federal, state, local will be following that, but then also in the private sector, they're going to be turning away from, not just these types of programs, but, we've had to fight for so long to get Black inclusion into employment in all different industries at all different levels. Are we going to start seeing some regression in that? Now, again, I think it's a little too early for that, but that is something to watch. And that's why it's so challenging that if Trump now wants to get rid of any numbers that would even allow us to understand what is occurring, right? And just keep us in the dark, that we could make this regression and not even be able to, follow the path of, what's really happening.
Yeah, and I think that's really, it's a challenge on a number of fronts, because it means that we're not, our news media, our mainstream news media isn't talking about any of these stories, right? I think the thing that you just said, if white unemployment was at 7.2, it'd be hair on fire, right? Black folks unemployment,
it'd be a strong recession,
right, is at 7.2, and there's no conversation about it, right? I think when there was lots of kind of reporting on the firing of federal workers, but not a lot of reporting on what that meant for all of the Black middle class, folks who would move their way into the middle class because of these jobs in the DMV area, right? What does it mean for folks in Maryland, right, where you have not just federal employees but people who've built businesses off of federal contracts and have lost all of those, right? There's no reporting.
And also too, the majority of federal jobs are outside of the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. There are federal jobs all across the country, right? Yep. And even more so, federal contractors all across the country. Right. So, it has a national effect.
Yeah, and I think that's
and I just want to note, too, federal government is the number one employer in the United States. So it's not like this is a small industry. Like, they have a bigger staff than, or more employees than Walmart, right? Like, they are the biggest employer in the United States.
Well, and I think that to your point, though, is that if we don't have the numbers, or if the numbers are inaccurate, and if already the media is not reporting on the stories that are happening underneath these headlines, then and again, to your point, also, I think which state has the largest number of federal workers? Is it California? It might be California, right? If we start seeing those folks being laid off in other parts of the country where there are large federal workforces, and we don't have the right numbers, we actually won't understand the overall impact of what is happening in America. And it reminds me a little bit of, again, like, we do this poll and folks say the economy is getting bad, but that's not the actual story, right? That we see in headlines.
No, that's right. I mean, I think we have seen through different surveys that when people have government, or particularly president, in power that they voted for that pushes the scale, for them to think the economy is doing better than it was, or someone who they don't like is in office, they think the economy is doing worse than it is, right? So, and so that's why, those of us who are trying to understand the economy aren't looking at what party is leading. We try to look at, what are real numbers, what are real indicators of how people are doing, income level, employment, labor participation rates, wealth, home ownership, different types of purchasing. I mean, there's thousands of different economic indicators people use to try to get a better understanding of how the economy is going. And I think most people do understand that there is still, great concern that the economy is very fragile, particularly the way the Trump administration has been so erratic in its policies, in trade tariffs, that it's very challenging for individual households to make a solid budget plan, because you don't know how much, meat's going to cost next week. You don't know what type of trade barriers going to come up, and much less businesses and entrepreneurs to try to figure out, what is the plan going forward, and or what is happening, and how do you plan to go forward in this context. So I think it does have the economy on edge, and people are concerned about it slowing down. And because, to be fair, we've had a pretty strong economy. And usually, outside of the COVID kind of recession, we've had a pretty strong economy, and it's not unusual. Actually, it is usual to have a recession every 10 or so years, and we're kind of due for one. And, so I think a lot of people are following following economics on edge about, what is next.
Yeah. All right, Dietrich Asante Muhammad, I have many questions for you, including questions about the impact of the reconciliation bill that was passed, the rescission bill that was also passed, and what economic impacts we might expect for those. But those questions when we come forward. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is vetoing a city council bill that would decriminalize illegal street vending.
It's all about votes, that's all. I think sometimes that's to get votes.
New Yorkers have had mixed reactions, with some supporting the move and others worried about street overcrowding. Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco-Johnson are being sued for $20 million over false claims made on their Nightcap podcast. Jimbalina Tillman, who attended an Usher concert, says they wrongly claimed she was married and divorcing. Tillman, who is single, says the false story damaged her reputation, and despite reaching out, the claims were never corrected. And Maryland is launching Longevity Ready Maryland to support its growing senior population. Black Governor Wes Moore says the plan brings together state agencies, communities, and private partners to build a stronger care system as federal aid declines. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Culver City on the 405 northbound. Delays leaving Venice Boulevard. You're on the brakes all the way to the 5 merge into Sylmar. Calabasas, South 101. That's backing up away from Las Virgenes. Pretty heavy and slow as you continue into Tarzana. More slowing ahead in Sherman Oaks from the 405 as you continue all the way into downtown Los Angeles. Now, the northbound side of the 101, it's slowing down as well out of Silver Lake, from just about Silver Lake Boulevard, and stretches all the way to White Oak in Encino.
Spending 2 hours staring at the back of someone's bumper isn't the best way to end your day. So Jack in the Box is giving you a bonus with their new Bonus Jack Combo. Fries, a drink, and a burger with your choice of 1, 2, or 3 patties, starting at just $4.49. Get so much more.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. If you've never taken the time to watch the ceremony, you really should tune in tomorrow. Tight end Antonio Gates, who played all 16 of his NFL seasons with the Chargers, is one of the Hall of Fame inductees. He's the first NFL player to be inducted into the Hall of Fame who did not play college football. Gates played basketball at Kent State University. He led Kent State to the Elite Eight in the 2002 NCAA tournament. Gates was not drafted by any NBA teams. No NFL team drafted him. The Chargers took a chance on Gates in 2003 and signed him as a rookie free agent. Today, Gates' 116 touchdown catches is the most by a tight end in NFL history. Gates also is the Chargers' all-time leader with 955 catches and 11,841 receiving yards. Not bad for a guy who really wanted to play in the NBA. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, yo, come on. Here come the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least like to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back with Dietrich Asante Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, talking about the economy, the jobs report. And Dietrich, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we spent a lot of time actually, last month, or actually time has no meaning. I think it was last month when the big, terrible, nasty bill passed, trying to keep folks informed about what was in the bill, what the impact was going to be, trying to make sure that we were encouraging folks to do what they could, right, to talk to their elected leaders about why they needed to be fighting in Congress to make sure that this didn't happen. It happened. And not only did we see that sort of terrible bill pass, but then there was this rescission bill that got passed. It was essentially taking away previously appropriated dollars. So, one of the things I think that we it's hard to keep in front of folks, right, what to expect, right, is coming. And so I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about, some of the cuts, right, and what the impact of those are going to be, the cuts to, both, federal staff and programs, the withholding of previously, allocated dollars. What are we likely to see in terms of the impact of the spending decisions that Congress just made?
Yeah, and it is such a massive bill. It is kind of hard to get your head wrapped around the full impact. Right. But, I think, I'll take one, particular area, and then we can talk about others. But, one thing that Trump administration really targeted is investments in cleaner energy, right, in solar and these types of things. Yeah. And, this is so important.
And wind, apparently wind is a bad thing.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's right. Like the most natural forms of producing energy, there has been a decision to cut subsidies to, just as we're actually having some of the greatest returns into this cleaner energy, where I believe it's around 90% of the kind of additional energy being added to our grid or to our power source is from clean energy. Right. So we're really seeing, this isn't the 70s. We're really seeing strong dividends coming back from that investment. And now we want to cut that investment as we need more and more energy because of technology like AI and the great amount of the great amount of energy that things like that artificial intelligence uses. So, people might say, what does that have to do with me? Well, one, if we're cutting a lot of these investments and some of these subsidies, it's expected that energy costs will go up. Mm-hmm. Energy costs will go up because we're cutting the investments and subsidies. There's also going, an increased demand. So all of those things are going to raise prices. So that's going to affect, your pocketbook. Mm-hmm. It's also the kind of the jobs of the future will be around a lot of this new type of clean energy. And if we're not investing in creating these new types of jobs, China really is the leader in clean energy development. So do we want American companies leading in developing, stronger and better clean energy, or do we want, foreign companies, which will hire mostly foreign workers to do that, right? So it's also, hurting the economy as a whole. And so those are things that I think, all of America, Black America needs to be concerned about. But then there's more specific things about as we're cutting over here. And we're going to cut also from Medicare and Medicaid, really providing health support to, lower income, mid-income Americans. But then we're going to provide, in terms of tax cuts, more investments, more money to the wealthiest of America. Right. And all at the same time creating deficit, which will then threaten future types of security programs. It could be Social Security. It could be public education. It could be highway maintenance, all of that. Yeah. So it's really a fiscally irresponsible bill, which is why even some, traditional fiscal conservatives were against it, because it was, it's really pushing the debt. And I don't think we always have to, I'm not a belief that we have to have no debt. Right. But, my concern more is, what are we spending on, and is it worth it to the benefit of America as a whole?
Yeah, and, when you were talking about the cuts to clean energy, it reminds me of obviously the work that the Biden administration did to get the infrastructure bill passed, right? And a lot of that was about expanding the clean energy markets and expanding jobs, right, within those markets, and making sure that that all Americans and all communities had access to those jobs. And that is just been taken away, right? So I remember talking to voters last year, trying to, make sure that folks understood that these were about economic growth, right? That these kinds of jobs, green jobs, right, were about, economic opportunity for our community. And it really was, and people understood that, right? And so part of the, we're not talking about folks who declared themselves environmentalists, right? These are folks who understood that this was a potential opportunity for them, right, to get into a new industry, and that's just been sort of taken away. And so it strikes me that a number of the things that we saw in the big terrible bill were about sort of undermining and erasing and taking away really positive, potentially positive economic impacts from the Biden administration. And we are sort of coming. I mean, I would ask you. I may be wrong in stating this way, but it does feel like we're sort of coming off of what was, one of the most positive economies for Black Americans under the Biden administration to really, arguably one of the worst in this moment. But you authored a report called The Best of Black Economy in Generations, and why it isn't enough, right? And so I just wonder your kind of thoughts on, where we are, right? Did I characterize that, accurately, that we've sort of gone from what was a pretty good economy for Black folks to one that is not, and maybe worse, right? Since we don't totally know what the implications of all of this is going to be, and what we would need to sort of like sustain, an economy that worked for our communities.
Yeah, in that report, I wrote with Dr. Algernon Austin from the Center for Economic Policy Research, Best Black Economy in Generations, Why It Isn't Enough. It was highlighting that, African Americans were at record high levels of Black wealth, at median wealth around, I believe, around $45,000 of median wealth. Black median household income around $55,000. What we talked about, unemployment levels, record low unemployment numbers. I think at that time it was around 6%, and in the past it was oftentimes in double digits. So all of that, was a kind of record level economy. Now we still had massive inequality, where even let's say a $45,000 median wealth, that's still deep in asset poverty. That might be a record level of Black wealth, but I think you have to hit about $100,000 before you get out of asset poverty, and the median wealth for whites was, I believe, over $250,000. So you still have these massive disparities, but the point was, this is a historic strength, and now how do we build off of that and strengthen it? And I think the biggest concern is if now we are going to actually move from that one step forward, we're going to go 8 steps back, right? And so that's what we have to be concerned about. And I'll say I am a little surprised about this because I try not to have a partisan analysis, and I will note that under Trump's first term, Trump was so focused on making America great again in some economic terms that he was willing to do a lot of investments and a lot of spending that traditional conservative Republicans weren't willing to do, and you actually had a pretty good unemployment rate for African Americans then. You had an economy going so strong that was willing that was pulling all of America forward. Now, in this second administration, we're seeing an interesting space where Trump seems to be pulling away investments into the American workforce, but while at the same time raising a deficit by giving tax cuts to the wealthiest of Americans. Right. So, Trump isn't even following, what was done in his first administration. At the end of the first administration, we had a weak economy because of COVID, and some people might blame that on Trump. I won't do that, but yes, I do think this second administration we're seeing a more challenging, disruptive economic policy that threatens to turn back some of the improvements that were needed. While what was really needed was, when Blacks don't have double-digit unemployment. When it's more like 6%, that is the time to really do some further investment to really get Blacks at full employment for the first time in the country's history. Like, that would have been the prime time, and we're squandering that, not just for now. Again, I think the most dangerous thing about these bills is that what it's going to do in 4 to 10 years, not what it's doing in 6 months.
Yeah. All right, Dietrich Asante Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. We are going to wrap up our conversation with you because I still have 1,000 questions that we are not going to get to, but I still have a couple of more. So when we come forward, we'll get into my final couple of questions for you. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Graham, and I have a big announcement to make. I have my own radio show. It debuts on KBLA 1580 on August 2nd, and it is called Entrepreneuring. I'm an inventor, a Shark Tank winner, entrepreneur for over a decade, and a proud mom of two. I created this show because I know firsthand that entrepreneurship doesn't have just one look. Entrepreneuring celebrates what building a business really looks like. Big, medium, small, and micro. Some of us are running multi-million-dollar operations. Some of us are braiding hair in our kitchens. We're bakers, grant writers, laundromat owners, event promoters. Mark your calendars. Please tune in August 2nd, KBLA 1580 at 1 p.m. Pacific time. No question is too big or small. Let me know what you'd like for me to cover. See you then.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
You are listening to the Black Pack. I am Adrianne Shropshire, and we are wrapping up our conversation with Dietrich Asante Muhammad, president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. So, Dietrich, I did this thing because I have 15 million questions for you that I want all answered. Mm-hmm. And I conflated a bunch of questions for you. And that last one, I was like, here's 4 questions, please answer them. So I want to actually pull one of them out and actually give you a fair chance to answer it. And that, what I think I was asking really was do you see any opportunities, right, in the interim, even where we are right now? Do you see any possibilities in the interim for us to make some impactful gains for our community? Or do we find ourselves, in a situation where we're just, kind of waiting it out?
No, I mean, there's always some space. Space for some positive gains. And again, we still are at a space, even as unemployment has gone up recently, from 6.1 to 6.8 to 7.2. This still is historically lower levels of unemployment. Our income levels are still, high historically, our wealth. So we're still at a place that, through some of our own type of action and focus on, I'm always saying we need to understand kind of the macroeconomics to make sure that our personal finance can work. Mm-hmm. And when we understand the macroeconomics and the long history of racial economic inequality and the reality of the racial wealth divide, we recognize that we need radical political change, but we also need very conservative personal finance. And through both of those things, we need to move forward. And I'll also note, there's still state policy, there's still local policy, there are still, different types of investments and policies that can be made that can have some important effects at the local community, even if we're having challenge to get big national bills passed.
Yeah. And I think that's helpful because I think that we oftentimes, and we always are trying to encourage folks to pay attention to what's happening at the state and local level, because sometimes politics at the federal level, it can be, is so, takes up all of the space, right? Like takes up all of the air in the room. And whether it's, whether it's elections or policy, we forget that we have other folks, right, that can make different kinds of decisions.
That's right. And in the election that Trump won, that the Republicans won the Senate and the House, it also was the election where we elected more black mayors than we've ever elected in the past. We also have more black senators than we've ever had in the past. We have, I think, more black governors than we've had in the past, strong black state legislators. And so, it wasn't just that things went one way and that we really lost ground in terms of black representation. Outside of since Obama, we've had much stronger representation in most elected official areas.
Right. And I will note, just on the political front, that is the reason why we are seeing this attempt to redistrict us out of power. We're going to talk about that in the next hour. But yes, that is exactly right. We have seen record numbers of folks in Congress and winning seats across the country. I wanted to let me just ask you this, because I feel like this is not come up in our conversation, but there's been a couple of times the word has come forward, and that is the word recession, right? And I think that there's been, I feel like since Trump came into office, there's just been, and particularly around, all the talk around the tariffs, et cetera. There's been this sort of dark cloud, I feel like, that sort of looms where people are talking about recession. In your opinion, are we headed toward a recession? How will we know if we're headed toward one? Like, what should people be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, one, I also want to put forward a recession occurring does not mean that the president or the House or the Senate caused it, right? I think we oftentimes use it as, well, if a recession happens, it was this president's fault, right? I mean, and that's not always the case. Now, I do think people are looking at, setting up a system of tariffs which is really going to rise prices for the average consumer when they're already have much concerns about the economy, could really frighten spending or, lessen spending, which then could add fuel to the fire and really push forth a recession much faster. And so, I do think, looking at employment numbers, oftentimes, the way economists look at recession is looking at the GDP and these types of things. But I think, it's also important to note, there's many people will say that, a recession is when your neighbor loses your job. A depression is when you lose your job, right? So I think one thing we have to focus on is, I think it is time. Well, and I think generally because of the racial wealth divide, the low amount of wealth most African Americans have, how are we investing, whatever we have? Like, and investing might be just in a basic savings account. It might be in a 401k. But I do think, most of us can could do better by focusing more on strengthening our savings and our investment so we can take advantage of future economic opportunities. And so if there is some type of small recession, it doesn't become a major crisis, because that's the chilling thing for African Americans. Oftentimes when we hit a low level of unemployment, we hit a recession, and it takes us twice as long to get back to where we were as it takes other communities.
Yeah. Well, I want to, so I also realized that you came on at earlier in the hour, and I just jumped in and started asking you questions. tell us how bad it is. Are we ever going to get out of it? And I did not ask you or give you an opportunity to actually talk about the work of the Joint Center. So please, just for listeners, talk a little bit about the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies and the work that you all do.
Sure. The Joint Center was founded in 1970. It was founded with the recognition with the Voting Rights Act in 1965 that blacks were starting to be elected elected into positions at a level never seen. But, politics isn't just run by an elected official. It is, there's infrastructure. There's policy infrastructure that helps elected officials, move policies forward, understand how to operate. And so Joint Center is really a leader in training, at the congressional level, but even just identifying, city, statewide black elected officials and connecting them and kind of being a think tank to help them think through, all right, so what type of developing policy analysis that would be clear on how to make sure that policies are strengthening their communities. And so, we've been called America's Black Think Tank. We're still called that today. We've been around for the 55th year anniversary. We have newsletters on different areas, everything from technology to workforce to overall policy to government diversity. Please check out our website at jointcenter.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. There's a lot of ways where we share our information, and we do a lot as well in tech. So, I hope as your audience, who I know is a very intelligent audience and is really looking into these issues, check out the website, jointcenter.org, and the social media, and hopefully you can continue to learn a lot more about what's happening and how it might affect you and your community.
I appreciate that. So as you're saying that, I feel like I am like, the gears are going around in my head to figure out when I'm going to have you back on to talk about the tech piece.
And also too, we have a great director of technology, Danielle Davis, who has her own podcast, and the Joint Center is much bigger than myself, and so I think that's one of the exciting things about Joint Center is we have different voices with strong policy analysis around how it affects Black communities. So I would love to come back on, but I'd love to bring other staff on as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm excited to talk to you and others, because these are all like critical issues that we need to make sure that we are all up on. So let me thank you for coming on and taking all my questions when I would conflate them all to try and get them all answered. I appreciate it, but that just means you need to come back. So thank you for joining us.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, Diedrich. When we come forward, we're going to talk about the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, which is happening next week. And we know all of the attacks that have been happening, and there's certainly more to come. So stay with us. We have a lot more to talk about.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Los Angeles crews are clearing a major homeless encampment in Van Nuys known as the campground along the 405.
We cannot accept Angelenos living like this. Some people actually fight for people to stay in these kind of conditions, and how dare they?
Black Mayor Karen Bass is upset with protesters trying to block the cleanup, which is part of her Inside Safe program to move people into housing.